and welcome to the Good Health Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Good, a registered nutritional therapy practitioner and functional medicine practitioner. Join me as we explore thyroid, brain, and fatigue conditions with positivity. From Hashimoto's to multiple sclerosis, chronic fatigue to adrenal dysfunction, I've got you covered. With expert advice and tips to help you take action now and inspiring real patient stories from successful individuals who refuse to let their health hold them back. Start your journey to good health today. And don't forget to come and join the conversation on Instagram at good_health. That's GOODE. Or visit my website at nicolegoodhealth.com to find out more. Today we welcome Frankie Gaff to the Good Health Podcast. Frankie made her name at a young age as a cast member on Made in Chelsea when she joined the show in 2016. She was also signed to a modelling agency and has lived much of her life in front of the cameras. Frankie has built a huge audience on her Instagram account and shares fashion, beauty and lifestyle tips to her over 250,000 followers. Since leaving Made in Chelsea, Frankie has had a baby boy, Theo, with her partner, Jamie, and not long after giving birth, found out that she had Hashimoto's hypothyroidism. Her journey is relatively new and she is learning all that she can about managing her health holistically. Today, we dig into her journey with her thyroid, her life behind the scenes, and Frankie even has some questions for me. Let's jump straight into the conversation. Okay, Frankie, welcome to the Good Health Podcast. I'm really grateful for you coming on today.
I know, I'm so excited.
Yeah, well, this is something, so we just to give people a little bit of backstory, you put a post up on Instagram about being diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and we kind of just connected, I think, in comments, I think, on that, and then we spoke on sort of DMs and got chatting about sort of thyroid issues, and obviously thyroid is something that I'm working with a lot. So it's just really nice to get people on who are going through that experience and can talk about it from the other side. I could talk about it from the practitioner side, but it's really nice to get people on that could talk about it from the patient side as well.
Yeah, I'm really excited because I've also got lots of questions for you. So yeah, and also I don't know, none of my friends have thyroid issues or that they know of, or Hashimoto, so I actually hadn't heard of it before, but since speaking about it on my Instagram, I've now got so many conversations in my DMs of girls going through the same thing and a lot of other mums, which is interesting because I'm obviously a mum of one, he is nearly 2, and I know it's something that can be quite common after childbirth. So yeah, it's been really good to speak about it and just connect with other women and also help each other. So there's a lot of people out there who have said, oh, I think I've got this, but my doctor's just dismissing it, blah, blah, blah. Where did you get your tests? How did you get them to test for it, etc., etc. So I'm excited to spread the word and just share.
Yeah, so just to kind of jump into that was something that I wanted to ask you. So I've asked people to send questions in, but I also had a few of my own questions for you. And that was one of them, was when you got the diagnosis, was it something that you instantly kind of felt, I want to talk about this, I want to share it, I want to help raise awareness? Or at first was it maybe not something you wanted to talk about, or did it just kind of happen naturally?
I think it just happened naturally. I definitely never thought, oh, I don't want to speak about it. I'm quite open anyway, and I don't see it as, it's not something that I'm like ashamed of, or I don't know, I have no negative feelings towards it, to be honest. If anything, getting the diagnosis I was so happy about, because I had felt ill for quite a while and I always thought it was something worse, if that made sense, because this time last year I got really bad health anxiety because I didn't know what was wrong and I did feel quite rubbish. So finding out was almost like oh my God, it's just my thyroid, even though it's not just your thyroid, but compared to what I was thinking it was in my head, it was a bit of a relief. And
getting those answers, isn't it? Having
even if it's not the answer you want, it's
one. I talked about this actually on an episode in the last season. I talked to a GB athlete who has MS, and she said for her it was very difficult for her getting the diagnosis. Actually, for her, she was the opposite. She found that very difficult. For me, and we talked about the difference, because for me it was a relief getting the diagnosis. So much like you, I felt that sense of relief of finally knowing what it was and feeling like actually somebody's listening to me and believes me when I say that these things are going on in my body. And so I went down the same road as you. For me, it was that sort of relief.
Well, there's two types of people, isn't there? There's the people that overthink everything and assume the worst case scenario. And then there's the other people who just sort of like go along and just don't really worry about anything and think, oh no, it'll be fine. And then when they then get told, oh, it is this or it's that, it can probably be harder.
Yeah.
So sometimes overthinking is almost better because you mentally prepare yourself.
Yeah, I'm the overthinker that was
yeah. No, me too. So, I spent hours on Google. I mean, that is not healthy at all, because what was coming back with my symptoms was not nice. But yeah, I did do a lot of research. But yeah, I don't want to speak about it too much, because sometimes I feel like, oh, for people who don't have it and don't like, it must be not that interesting to them. It's only really interesting, obviously, if you're going through it.
Yeah. But I think there's a lot of people as well, even if they're not going through thyroid necessarily, there's a lot of people that are going through similar things, in the sense of they maybe are having symptoms, they may be feeling tired, they know something's wrong, they don't know what it is. So it's not necessarily just thyroid people that are going to relate to your story.
Yeah, I think it's nice when I see other people talk about different things related to their health. It's nice knowing that like not everyone is this perfect healthy human being, because sometimes you look at people, especially people you would admire or something, and you think, oh, they'd never have this or they'd never have to deal with that. But actually, I mean, it's health doesn't pick and choose, like, or like disease. It doesn't be like, oh, she's like this, so she's not going to get disease. Or to a certain extent, obviously, I know you can live different lifestyles and stuff, but do you know what I mean? It can affect anyone.
Yeah, it can. And it's and something you mentioned there as well in the beginning, which is interesting, is because did it happen for you, because you've got a little boy, Theo, who's quite young, so he's
nearly 2.
Okay, so was it something that happened for you postpartum or pregnancy?
Yes, so about a year after he was born, I just didn't feel myself, and I had lots of different symptoms, which we can go into, and I don't know what it was. I just kept waking up and I was saying to people around me, like, I just don't feel 100%. I was like, I don't feel super ill, like I need to stay in bed all day, but I just didn't feel 100%. I couldn't explain it. And it stressed me out so much, because that feeling of not knowing, or like, what's happened, what's wrong with me. So then when he was around 1, so nearly a year ago, I went and did a full well woman check, which was great. And all my symptoms, I've said this quite a lot on my Instagram when I've spoken about it, the doctor at the time was like, I know what it is. You've got a hypothyroid.
Yeah.
Let's do the tests, but I can guarantee this is what it is, because my symptoms were like severe anxiety, like panic attacks coming, like I'd never had panic attacks before, and I was suddenly getting these horrendous panic attacks in my sleep. My bones hurt. I'd lost so much weight. I think I'd lost about, obviously it was hard to measure my weight because I was also postpartum.
Yeah, okay. So like, difficult time.
I don't know what my normal weight is, but I knew I was much skinnier. I was about 10 kgs lighter than I was pre-baby, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But that was another symptom. Racing heart, like my heart rate was like over 100.
So at this point, they thought you were hyperthyroid because of the symptoms.
Yeah, overactive. Yeah,
overactive. So hyper, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I might have said that wrong. And just so tired, like exhausted. But again, I didn't know. It's very difficult when you've had a baby. Even a year in, you're still like postpartum. It's crazy. And because I kept saying, well, maybe it's just because I've got a child. Like maybe I'm tired because he doesn't sleep. Maybe I've lost all this weight because I'm running around after him 24 hours a day. Like maybe I just kept thinking, okay, maybe it's that.
So, and I think as women, we're very good at that, putting it down to being, tiredness and things like that, particularly as a symptom, putting it down to being busy, being a mom, working, trying to juggle all the balls and keep everything afloat. We're very good at just sort of saying, it's just that I'm busy and I'm tired and I've got a child, and sort of almost sweeping it under the carpet a little bit.
Yeah. I found it really difficult to know what was normal and what was not, because obviously I'd never been a mum before, so I didn't know if this was normal. Anyway, it just got to the point where, because it was giving me such adding to the anxiety, I just was like, I'm just going to do a well woman check. And I did that privately, because I don't think you can do that on the NHS, can you?
No, that's got to be done privately. So on the NHS, you can get some blood tests, so that if you'd have gone, they would have done some blood tests maybe for you. But the thyroid testing they do on the NHS is very limited.
Yeah.
Often just TSH, which is a very, very small part of the thyroid picture.
Yeah, I've actually just had tests done last week with the NHS, and I specifically said, can you test T3 and T4? Is that right?
Yeah.
I know there's more than that, but I didn't think we'd go into more than that. So I was like,
yeah,
just test these two.
You're lucky if you get that. Yeah.
I know. But yes, I did the well woman check, and at the time, my thyroid came back just slightly hypo, but not significant enough. So they said there's a few other deficiencies that I had going on as well, but that was like the main thing. And then it was just let's leave it as it is. We'll retest in 8 weeks. And then we'll test again and see if it's on a downward trend or if it sort of levels out again. But it continued to go down. So then I went straight on to
levothyroxine. Yeah.
So that.
And did you find it hard, because obviously you were experiencing, and this is something that people generally I think don't know, you were obviously experiencing hyper symptoms, but got diagnosed with hypothyroid. And people don't realize that you can be hypothyroid but have hyper flares, and this is particularly when you've got Hashimoto's. This is much more common. And so you maybe weren't experiencing what we would class as the typical hypo symptoms, because that would be putting weight on and those sorts of things. Did you find that difficult? Were people sort of, I mean, being in the public eye, I suppose weight is something that comes up as a conversation that maybe you don't want necessarily talked about quite so much in the public eye, but was it something where people starting to notice the weight loss? Did they not accept that it was down to the thyroid, or was that not something that people really picked up on?
People on Instagram, people would just say, oh my God, how have you lost your baby weight? Blah, blah, blah. To be honest, in person, I found it really difficult, because all my friends and like my partner's friends and their girlfriends would come over and be like, oh my God, you look amazing, you look so skinny, kind of thing. And at the time I was so anxious about it, because I was trying to put on weight, because I was so scared. But I think this is before I knew it was because of my thyroid. And at this point, if you Google extreme fatigue, weight loss for no cause, like it comes up as all these cancer things. So at that moment in time, I was thinking worst case scenario. And then all these people telling me how much weight I'd lost as if it was a good thing. I think I really struggled with that. I found it so, I'd never found people commenting on my weight, as in my friends and like people close to me, more annoying than ever. Before, I probably would have loved that and been like, oh great, like I'm in good shape, this is great, thank you, you're making me feel really good. But at the time, I found it so stressful.
And it doesn't help if you've got, and you said you had a bit of like health anxiety and things like that, and things like that don't help. And people don't always realize that sort of connection between, I think we instantly think weight loss means health, but sometimes that's not the case. And obviously in this case it wasn't.
I know. And I would try and explain to them, I was like, guys, I'm 5'9", and at the time I think I weighed 54 kg, and I was like, that's not my healthy weight. Like, so it's not a good thing. Like, stop telling me it's a good thing. My mum was the only one, and my dad would be like, what's going on, you've lost all this weight. They knew that wasn't my body. I've always been slim because I'm tall, but not that slim. But I did struggle with that sort of side of it. But at the same time, when I then realized it was an underactive thyroid, I then was almost happy that I hadn't had the weight gain, because I was like,
it's something a lot of people struggle with really badly, is that they can't lose weight when they've got hypothyroid, and they really struggle with it. So
I think that happened to me now, this is something I wanted to talk to you about, is that I feel like now I'm getting all the hypothyroid symptoms.
Yeah.
Like, even though I'm on medication, so I'm like, I don't know why it's going on, but like my hair, my hair's still thick, but when you wash your hair or you're brushing it, I can just feel that more hair is coming out.
It's that sort of shedding.
Yeah. And weight, I've gained about 10 kg since I was first diagnosed, which is quite a lot. Like, I'm not saying, oh, I'm big or anything like that, but I can see it. I'm not eating any differently. So something's changing.
So you've gone into that sort of from the hyper symptoms into the hypo symptoms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
and that
makes me so nervous.
And this is something that I think is something I talk about an awful lot, because when we're looking at thyroid, so to kind of answer your question is like, why is that happening when you're on the medication? That there's quite a lot of different things we need to look at. And we've got two different things going on. We've got hypothyroid, and then we've got the Hashimoto's, the autoimmune aspect of it. If we take just the hypo, so just the thyroid function, there's a whole thyroid pathway that can go wrong, and it can go wrong mainly in 3 different places. The first part is that TSH level, and that's what the medication works on. So that's what they give you the medication for, to help balance that out, to help you produce the right amount of hormones. The problem is we produce about 90% of the hormone we produce in the body is T4, and that is not bioavailable. So your body cannot take that up. It can't use it. It has to be converted to T3, which is the usable form, which only 10% of what your thyroid makes is actually in this active form, is in T3. Mm-hmm. The medication doesn't do anything to support that conversion. So it will help you to produce the right amount of hormones, but if your body is still not doing the conversion, then you haven't got the active form in the body, and you're still not taking it up. So then people don't necessarily see the settling down of all the symptoms just with medication. So that's the second part that can kind of be going wrong within those pathways that people don't realize medication is not working on. And then the third part is your body's actually got to be taking that up. So the cells, we've got receptor sites on all our cells to take this hormone up. And if your body is not doing that effectively, then you could have all the thyroid hormone in the world in your body, but if your cells are not taking it up, you're not using it. And the medication doesn't help with that either. So that's kind of the thyroid pathway part. And then we've got the other side of things, which is this autoimmune side. And the medication doesn't work on the autoimmunity at all. Yeah. So that's something that also, if that's in balance, we're not going to see the benefits of reduced symptoms and things like that.
So just a quick question about the converting to T3 and what you just said. Would blood tests show whether or not your body is converting it and if your cells are absorbing it?
Yeah, so not if your cells are absorbing it. You can get an idea, but we can tell from blood tests whether you're converting well. So this is where it gets a bit tricky on the NHS, because generally they will always test TSH, and they will keep retesting TSH, not maybe quite as much as we would like in functional medicine, but they will do it. But they don't test T3, T4, reverse T3, generally don't test your antibodies regularly either. The usual comment with antibodies is, once we know you've got them and we know you've got the autoimmune disease, there's no point in testing them, which is actually entirely the wrong way of looking at it, because your antibodies are a much more stable marker than your thyroid function markers are, so the T4, T3 and TSH. So actually monitoring your antibodies is a much better way of monitoring the progression of your disease than the other markers.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of conversion, if we can check T4, T3, reverse T3 and your TSH, we can build that picture and find out whether or not you're actually converting that properly, and getting enough of the T3, which is the form that we want in the body.
And if someone is on the highest dose of the medicine and they're not converting, what do you do then? So
there's certain nutrients that are needed for that. So it's the same with any biochemical pathway, or any conversion, anything that has to happen in the body, any chemical process. your body needs certain nutrients to be able to do that process. And we need particular nutrients to be able to convert the T4 to T3. So we use high strength, very specific nutrients to help support that conversion so that your body is able to do that conversion properly. Because sometimes there's other imbalances going on. So like you said, you had a couple of other imbalances on your blood tests, and they may, or depending on what they are, they may or may not be connected to your thyroid, but some things are. So it's making sure that the body's got everything that it needs to be able to do that conversion. And also the thyroid is very interlinked around the body. So it's hormones. So it's very linked to your hormones, very linked to your endocrine system. It's very linked to your brain. It's very linked to gut health, your immune system, all these different things. So making sure that all of those are balanced so that you're actually, because some people sort of say, they'll come and sort of say, well, I eat lots of that food that's got that nutrient in, which is great. But if actually your gut health isn't very good and you're not absorbing that nutrient very well, then your body can't use it to do the conversion and things like that. So it's a much bigger picture than I think people realize. And I'm not anti taking the medication. Taking the medication is the first step, and it's a brilliant first step. But there's a lot of other things that we can do and work on to support the body in making that conversion, and also balancing the other things out to make sure that everything is healthy and you're actually taking up nutrients from food and all of that sort of thing.
That's one thing I've noticed recently, is that I feel like sometimes I feel so stupid, like I've lost my mind. And I see someone else actually said this to me, or put a comment or something about feeling like they've lost their mind, but it's actually, then they find out something to do with their thyroid. I don't know if that's a thing.
Like a brain fog type of thing.
I keep spelling things wrong, or like doing typos, and I'm just like, that is not me. Why am I doing that?
Yeah, so there's different parts of so there's generally two parts of the brain that are linked with the thyroid, and one part tends to be the sort of the brain fog, memory, sort of those sides of things. That's very linked to it being Hashimoto's. So with autoimmunity, that part of the brain gets very impacted. And then also with thyroid, we can see the cerebellum in the brain, another part of the brain, be impacted, and that can impact things like your balance, your coordination. So some people all of a sudden will start saying, oh, I feel like I'm a bit more clumsy than I used to be, and things like that. And
I'm always walking into doors. Like
that's the typical one. I keep walking. A lot of people say I've got bruises all on my arms because I walk into door frames all the time, and
it's always just like my shoulders. I'm just knocking, like just by like that much. And I'm like, what is going on? And I also saw this as well, I don't know if this is true, about it can give you a stutter.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of neurological things that it can impact. It's different for everybody. Obviously, it's different for everybody. Some people won't get the brain impacted at all, and other people will get the brain impacted quite significantly. And yeah, there's various different neurological things that can come out, lots of different symptoms. But the classics are the brain fog, memory, those sorts of things, and the balance, coordination, walking into door frame. That's the typical thing. Lots of people say to me, I keep walking into door frames. And that is the impact, this connection with the thyroid and the brain. And we do things to help support that. So we make sure the brain's got the nutrients it's needs. There's some exercises we can give to help with the cerebellum. We can do cerebellum exercises to help support that part of the brain. And so there's lots of different things that we can do, but people just don't know about these connections, and they don't look into it. And if they need to know, and that's why having these conversations is so good, because if people know about these things, then they can actually do something about it.
Yeah. One thing that annoys me as well is that people, I think, don't realize not how bad it is, but how it is quite a serious, not serious, it's not like life threatening. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
It's not, unless you leave it untreated, obviously, but it's not like a disease that is putting you in hospital or killing you, or I don't know how to say it, but it's something that you can live with and manage and stuff. But I feel like a lot of people go, oh, everyone says they've got thyroid issues, or girls just use that as an excuse when they've gained weight. I've heard that before. And like my partner, he doesn't make comments like that. He's not like that, but I don't think he appreciates, like, sometimes I'm exhausted. Like if our little one gets up in the night, it's me that is always up with him, like never my partner. And his sort of excuse is that he works his job is more important, basically.
Yeah.
But obviously I still work. And sometimes it frustrates me because I'm like, I also have autoimmune disease that makes me so tired, like exhausted.
And it's a different tiredness. People don't understand. Like, we can all say like, oh, I'm tired. Usually it's if you've done something, like you've been to the gym and you feel tired afterwards, or something like that. And it's a normal sort of tiredness where you will rest for a little while and you'll feel better. But that autoimmune fatigue, and it really is fatigue, not tiredness, is entirely different. And I think unless you've experienced it, it's very difficult for family and friends and people like that to really understand what it feels like. I've had people in clinic, I've had clients explain it in so many different ways, but like some people have sort of said, I feel like I'm like dragging myself through quicksand. And like they just, it's like the explanations that people come up with, all different kind of things of trying to explain what this fatigue is. And it is totally different to just tiredness. It's something else. It's like you almost can't keep functioning.
Yeah.
Whereas a tiredness relieves itself quite easily with rest.
Yeah, exactly. That's one thing I struggle with, of people not understanding that, or just not even like having empathy or whatever for it. Just like, oh, I don't know. Because obviously my Theo as well, he's such a bad sleeper. So managing this and a child that just doesn't sleep can sometimes be absolutely exhausting. But yeah, I think it is hard for other people to appreciate that or understand it.
Yeah, and I think people almost particularly, and I think that's where thyroid is difficult for women who have it sort of postpartum, because people almost expect you to be tired. They're sort of like, well, you've just had a baby, you've got a young one at home who's, like you said, not sleeping, and so you're just expected to be tired. But it's, if you've got this going on as well, and really any autoimmune disease, because a lot of autoimmune diseases cause this type of fatigue, it's difficult beyond what I think people kind of understand. So if we kind of jump into something else, because this is something that people have asked, and I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with, is what was your journey, or what has your journey been like? What is it like now in terms of getting support on, I know you said you've been on the NHS and you've been private, and a lot of people have sent these questions in, like, how did you get the test done? How did you get the diagnosis? Because I know it's something a lot of people struggle with. A lot of people that come to me in clinic, their big thing is, I've just not been able to get the testing done. I've not been able to get the answers. I think it's this, but, I just can't get there. So what's your journey been like in getting to diagnosis and post-diagnosis in terms of getting treatment?
So obviously I was lucky enough to be able to go private, which made getting the tests done easy, obviously. But if I had to do it again and I was going to go through the NHS, if someone wasn't testing me, I would go to the doctor and literally list the symptoms of the NHS website and be like, this is what I have. I have all these symptoms. Do you think you could do a test? I know it's a bit of a silly answer, but if they're literally not testing you, just tell them you have those symptoms, and then surely they have to do a test. But yeah, I obviously was lucky enough to go private. I did the full well woman check, which I know is really expensive and it's not for everyone. And the clinic that I went to were in Marylebone in London. They were amazing. And a few different things came up for me in terms of, like, I was deficient in iron, vitamin D, quite a few like the things that are common to be deficient in. And then my thyroid was just on the line of being hypo. I always forget which one. Yeah. Just on the verge. I wasn't classified. I don't think is there a line? I hadn't crossed that line yet, but I was right on that line. Okay. And then they said to me, let's leave it as it is, see if it balances out. We'll test you again I think they left it 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And then went back, did the test, and it continued to go down. And then they started me on, I think 50, I don't know what the measurement is.
Milligrams.
50 mg of levothyroxine. Sorry, I don't know if I'm and that's where we started. At that point, I then took it to the NHS because the private doctor had said, obviously I could keep it with them, but I was going to have to be tested quite regularly. Also, the doctors that I was going to wasn't local to me. I'm in Wimbledon and the doctor was in Marylebone. So not really far, but if you're going to be doing blood tests every 6 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever it was, you kind of just want it to be on your doorstep. And then obviously going through the NHS, it was going to be a lot cheaper or cost nothing. So that's what I did, and I did take it to the NHS. I requested them to do an antibodies test because I'd said that the private GP had suggested that that was what I did, and to be honest, they were happy to do that, and they did that straight away. So the antibodies test was obviously to test for whether or not it was caused by a autoimmune condition. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. So they do the antibodies to see whether or not you've got that autoimmune aspect. So whether or not it's just hypothyroid or whether it's Hashimoto's.
Yeah, and that came back positive. One thing I struggled with when doing those tests was they were obviously very happy to do the test, and then the result came back, and it sort of comes through on the app. So with where I am, you have to then make a doctor's appointment once they've said they've got the results to discuss the results.
Right, okay.
But sometimes they don't have appointments for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I'm the most impatient person ever. So I obviously went straight on the app and then Googled my result. And also my friend is a doctor. She's a pediatrician, so she doesn't know everything. She doesn't know that much about thyroid, but she could obviously read the test. So I actually kind of diagnosed it myself from the result that was given. And then I had a phone call with the doctors, and they were just I think I mentioned to you this before, they were just very blasé about it. They were like, so yes, it could be this, it could be Hashimoto's, but we don't know for sure. I can't really remember, to be honest, exactly what they said, but I remember there was no like, yes, this is what you have, this is what it means, this is what it is. There was none of that. It was kind of just like, you might have it, you might not, but your antibodies come back positive.
Yeah, and that's a sort of a common story I hear, is that people are either told that they're either told they have hypothyroid and not told, even if the antibodies come back positive, not told that they've got Hashimoto's, or it's not explained to them what the difference is, so what it means to be Hashimoto's as well as hypothyroid. And people don't realize, I have a question on my intake questionnaire that is, do you have any autoimmune diagnoses? And people will put in the first box where they've listed their diagnoses that they've got Hashimoto's, and then we'll tick no for the do I have an autoimmune disease, because they've just not been told that Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease. And for me, the big problem with that is that we know that once you've got one autoimmune disease, you're likely to collect them, so you're likely to get more diagnoses. So the average is 5 once you've got one. And
oh my god,
sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
Wait, so what other ones are there?
Oh, there's over 100, and some of them are mildly. So people come to me quite regularly, and they'll sort of say, they get Raynaud's, which is like the white fingers when you're in the cold. And people quite commonly will sort of have something like that, which is something or nothing. It doesn't cause them any problems. They don't really need to do anything about it. But it's an autoimmune disease, and they've had it for many years and not realized they've actually already got this autoimmunity in the body. So there's lots of different things that it can be. And sometimes it can be other complex illnesses, and sometimes it can be sort of more minor things. But we do know that once you've got one, you do collect these diagnoses. So if you don't know that you've got autoimmunity, you can't work on it. And people don't realize that they need to work on it. And that, for me, is the problem with the doctors and with conventional medicine not saying to people, actually, you've got this Hashimoto's, you've got autoimmune disease. Now you need to work on that as well as working on the thyroid.
Why are they like that, though? I just don't understand. Like, surely they know.
It's a complex one, and they're not really doing anything wrong from their training. So they're trained. Our conventional medicine system, the NHS system, is built around acute illness, so not chronic illness. It's built around sort of emergency care, if you like. And they are taught to treat people once they've reached a disease state. So once you've actually got diagnosable conditions, with drugs or surgery. That's what medical school teaches people. So that's one issue, because chronic illness, a lot of the time, actually, we may need drugs, but we don't necessarily solely need drugs, and we don't always need surgery. We need other forms of treatment in there. We need a more holistic approach. So the NHS system is not designed for chronic illness very well. It's much more designed for this acute illness. And we also don't have, so because the way that our system is designed in the UK, doctors all have specialities. So we've got, neurologists and rheumatologists, and they all specialize in a part of the body and area. We don't have, autoimmunology is not a thing. It doesn't exist. It's not a speciality. So because of that, it doesn't get taught all that well in med school. It kind of gets missed. So there's a lot of cases of people with autoimmune disease where they're slipping through the net and they're not getting the support that they need.
That is just crazy, because some of the autoimmune diseases are really serious, aren't they? I mean, my auntie had celiac disease, and she was in hospital with it.
Yeah.
Because she didn't know she had it, but she was so ill.
Yeah.
So like, how is it just overlooked? I don't understand.
Yeah, it is. And it's, I think really in that circumstance, it's because it's acute illness that the NHS is designed for. So, if you have something very sudden, you have a heart attack, something like that, they are excellent at dealing with those types of cases. But the chronic health system, we just really don't have anything in place for the chronic health system, or not much in place for the chronic health issues. And they also don't jump in until, this is something else that comes back from a lot of people that I work with will say to me, well, I went to the doctors and I didn't have a thyroid problem. So they weren't necessarily, a bit like you're saying, you were on the border. A lot of people will come to me and say, well, they said, I'm not there yet. I don't have it. So they've sent me away and basically told me to come back once it's got worse, and they'll give me the drugs. And a lot of people come to me because they don't want to wait until things get worse, particularly if you're, the way we were saying, sort of that more, have that sort of, I don't know, health anxiety around things and want to kind of get answers and stuff like that. There's a lot of people that don't feel comfortable leaving it at that point. And then they come to me and they're like, well, I don't want to just leave it till I get worse, because I don't want to get worse. I want to stop it before it does. And there's nothing within our medical system that will work on it prior to being at a diagnosable point. So at a point where they can say you've got a disease. Whereas with what we do in functional medicine, we can jump in a lot earlier. And autoimmunity is not, so like you said, okay, it's not, people sort of are brushing off your thyroid issue as, maybe it's not that serious, you're not in hospital, but it is a serious condition. It's not necessarily something you need to be in hospital for, but it is something that, if left, will get worse. And if you work on it, you can push it back into remission. So it's not something that we can cure. Once you've got autoimmune disease, you've got it in the body, and that's it. You'll have it for life. It's a chronic condition. But you can either be pushing it back into remission, or you can be making it worse and triggering it. And everybody will have flare-ups and relapses and things like that. But the more we can keep it in remission, the longer you're going to live well with it.
Mm-hmm.
And the earlier you jump in, the better. But if people don't know these things, they can't do it.
The word disease I always find so scary. I think that's what makes me think it's serious. So because I will purposely say I've got an autoimmune condition, because I feel like the minute I say disease, people will be like, oh my God, are you dying? Like, are you okay? I remember when I first told Jamie I have an autoimmune disease, Jamie's my partner, he was like, oh my God, he didn't understand. He was like, oh my God, wait, does that mean you're going to die? Like, what's wrong? This is right at the start. Now he just doesn't ask about it at all. But at the start, I think the word disease obviously just sounds, it makes me feel a bit dirty. I don't know what it is. It makes me feel like something inside me is not right, which is not, but
and it's scary.
Yeah.
I think educating yourself is hugely beneficial with that, and knowing, understanding what autoimmunity is, and for people listening to this who, like you, don't know what autoimmune diseases are and things like that, it's hugely beneficial to be able to educate yourself. A huge part of what I do is educating people. It's allowing people to understand what's actually happening in their bodies and what they can do to help support their bodies in ways that, are not available in our conventional medicine system, particularly in the UK. I know there'll be people listening to this from sort of around the world, and America works slightly differently, but particularly in the UK, our conventional medicine system be it NHS or private, is not very well tailored to dealing with these sorts of conditions. We'll call them conditions if it makes you feel better.
Yeah. I was reading something recently. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something about how in the US there's a certain type of drug you can get to do with the thyroid, but you can't get it here.
Yeah, there's quite a lot in the USA that's not available in the UK. Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. They do tend to be a lot further on. And functional medicine, I mean, everything that I do, functional medicine, I've done all my postgrad training in the States because they are so far ahead in terms of dealing with these conditions, and the training that they have. They're much further ahead than we are in the UK. So I've done all my postgraduate training over in America.
Amazing.
Yeah. So for you, because diet, what a lot of the questions came in were around diet.
That's the questions I have as well.
Yeah, lots of people wanted to ask, what did you eat before? What do you eat now? There was lots of questions that came in. So let's kind of dig into that area a little bit, because you share, you on your Instagram, you share a lot of recipes. You seem to quite like cooking. You've obviously, you look like a person who has, from looking through your feed on Instagram, who is into food and enjoys cooking and doing all this sort of stuff. So what did your diet look like before you knew about any of this, and what changes have you made, if any, sort of since?
So I love food. I love cooking. My diet has always been, I'm not a diet, as in to be honest, I'm not a healthy eater at all. I love pasta. I love pizza. I love salads. To be honest, I eat a lot of different things, but my downfalls to my diet are I eat a lot of sugar. I eat a lot of dairy. Yeah, I eat a lot of gluten. To be honest, I don't have the most ideal diet. I'd say my diet is pretty unhealthy. Recently, so in the last so when I first got diagnosed, I didn't really, because I was put on the medication, I kind of just thought that was sorted out. I don't need to do anything else, because again, no one said to me at the time, oh, maybe you should look into your diet and other lifestyle factors. I'm not a huge drinker, so I don't drink a lot of alcohol. I might have 1 or 2 glasses every 2 weeks. I'm not, I think because I'm so tired from Theo that the thought of making myself more tired with a glass of wine just isn't appealing to me. So high sugar, high gluten are the 2 biggest things I'd say, which I know neither are good for an autoimmune condition. But in the last I think I might have mentioned to you, I can't remember, but I have felt like I've been having flare-ups, and I felt like my symptoms have been getting worse. And this is something I said to my mom. I was like, I now feel this. I never felt like I had the underactive thyroid symptoms, and now this summer, I say at the start of summer, I started to feel like I was getting those symptoms, like my hair, my weight. I was also getting skin conditions on my face, which I never had before. I didn't know if that was linked, but all these things started happening all together, and I was just like, maybe it's all to do with my thyroid, I don't know. So since then, I've been looking online, but it's so hard because there's so much information out there.
There is.
So it's so hard to really pinpoint what is right and what is not. And it's because when there's all these different things as well, it's really difficult, because trying to do all those things that people are suggesting at once can seem really overwhelming. It doesn't seem very feasible to stick to. It just doesn't feel that wouldn't work for me. If I want something to be long lasting and changes that I make, which I will carry on living for the rest of my life, it has to be quite gradual, because if I take everything all at once, I'm that person that I'll do it for a week and then I'll be and then grab everything that I'm not supposed to grab, basically.
Yeah.
So I kind of said to myself, okay, I'm going to start eating meat again, because I wasn't really eating meat. I had a little bit when I was pregnant. And then since Theo started eating when he was about 6 months, he was having things with meat in, and I would just sort of pick. And because I wasn't eating meat, I was then eating a lot more pasta, gluten, just all those sort of things. So I was like, right, if I start having chicken, I can have chicken, brown rice, broccoli. I like that dish, if that makes sense. So I decided to start eating meat again. I have cut down, I haven't got rid of gluten completely, but I started doing like a low gluten diet. I don't even know if that's a thing, but at home I try not to eat gluten. But if I was out for dinner, if I wanted something, I'd have it. And then I kind of said to myself, if I really feel different from not having gluten over a period of time, then I would cut it out completely. And then sugar, I've said to myself I need to eat less sugar, but if I'm being really honest, I haven't really stuck to that. It depends on the day. It's because I'm so tired.
Yeah, I noticed you shared on your Instagram, you shared a low or no sugar, no gluten recipe, I think, this week.
It was like, well, it was cookies. So it had like protein in, and it was, instead of sugar, there was a bit of maple syrup to sweeten it. I know that's still sugar, right?
Yeah.
It's not
but it's natural sugar as opposed to sort of white refined sugar. So it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah. And I made them gluten-free. The gluten-free thing, I have done that before, like years ago. I was gluten-free for a while. So I find that easy, and there's so many gluten-free options now anyway. But I feel like my issue is as well is that I like, not necessarily like processed food. Like I don't eat a packet of like super noodles, but like I like making like chicken nuggets, but my homemade chicken nuggets, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But still got, even though it's gluten-free flour, it's still like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel healthy. Is that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways you can make foods like that more healthy. Gluten is one of those that with any autoimmune condition, so be it thyroid or anything else, gluten certainly needs to be reduced, if not eliminated, from the diet. And the reason for that is the link between gut health and autoimmune diseases. So when we eat gluten, we have along the gut wall, we've got these junctions that are called tight junctions that open and close. And they open and close to let the nutrients from your food through into the bloodstream. So when you're eating all the good stuff like the broccoli and stuff like that, and you want to take all the nutrients up from your food, you want these tight junctions to open because you want to take those nutrients into the bloodstream so you can get them into the body. What gluten does is opens these tight junctions further, so wider, so they can let through larger molecules. And they're the molecules that we don't want to get through into the bloodstream. And once they've got into the bloodstream, your immune system has to go around and mop them up. So it's activating your immune system all the time, which we don't want with autoimmune disease, because then we're at risk of then your immune system is then active and it could further damage, in this case, your thyroid or whatever other condition it might be. It also does similar things with, we have a blood-brain barrier, and gluten does a similar thing with the blood-brain barrier as well. So it can make things, so people often with gluten look for gut symptoms like, well, I don't have an upset stomach, I don't have bloating, I don't have gut symptoms, so gluten's not a problem for me. Gluten actually can have a big impact on the brain. So even somebody who's got a condition as serious as celiac, which you mentioned before, some people with celiac have no gut symptoms whatsoever, but will have really bad like brain fog type symptoms. And that is the impact of the gluten. So gluten is particularly bad with the autoimmune diseases. Another one you mentioned, the dairy. So it's a little bit of a similar thing. Dairy's got a protein that's very similar to a protein within our body. So it's called molecular mimicry, and your immune system kind of mistakes your own tissue for this protein in the dairy. So that's where the problem with dairy comes in. So there's a lot of reasons for like reducing and taking these things out of the diet. Gut health, particularly with gluten, if we can take the gluten out, we can help heal that gut wall and get it really strong again, so that we're not letting things through into the bloodstream and not setting off the immune system. And that's really important. That's why we work on gut health a lot with autoimmunity. But the other thing I see, kind of the other extreme of this, is a little bit like what you've just said. People often come to me and they've read online, I need to cut this out and that out, and all these different things, and they're on such a restrictive diet, and they may feel better, a little bit better maybe initially at first, cutting stuff out, and then they start to feel worse again. And actually that's usually because they've just gone onto too restrictive a diet, because they've read all this stuff on Google, they've taken all this food out of the diet, and actually now they're not getting enough nutrients, and it's as simple as they're not actually feeding the body enough now. So it's that sort of fine line.
When I was feeling ill a year ago, when I didn't really know what I had yet, but I knew there was something, I ordered this cooking book, and it was the autoimmune diet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the most restrictive thing I have
Yeah.
ever seen. It was like, yeah, no dairy, no gluten, no sugar, certain meats you can't have, certain vegetables, like no broccoli. I think broccoli was like a no, or like there was certain vegetables that you couldn't have, and certain meats you couldn't have. And I was just like, I remember being so desperate at the time because I felt so ill. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to do this, otherwise I'm gonna die. But I still have the book, and I looked at it the other day and I was like, I just don't know if I could live. It's very Mediterranean, but way stricter.
Yeah, we call it the autoimmune paleo diet, is usually what it's referred to. It's highly restrictive, and I do get people that come to me who have been on it for a long time, and they're actually really struggling. They maybe initially felt better, but then they're really not, and that's just because they're on a really limited, very restricted diet and not maybe getting enough in. And I think when we take foods out, it's really important to make sure that you put food back in. So we need to, anything that comes out of the diet, you need to make sure that you're still getting the nutrients from other foods and still getting more foods back in the diet. So a lot of what I do is getting foods back into the diet with people, as well as taking out a few things that need to come out. And everybody's different as well. I think that's really, a lot of people sort of say to me, like, can't you just tell me like what the diet is for thyroid? What is the thyroid diet? And it's just not that simple. Everybody is different, and everybody's underlying cause for why they've got a thyroid issue will be different. So I could have 5 people in clinic, all with thyroid, who have all got a different underlying reason why they've got it. I had one, so last week I had a load of different thyroid. My clinic is probably now about 70-75% thyroid. There's so much of it. And we had different underlying reasons. One had mold toxicity, so we actually needed to work on the mold to heal that. One had gut health issues, one had hormone imbalances, so we're working on hormones. So it's different for different people, and there isn't one diet that is going to solve all.
What tests did you do to find out? So like you're saying one person had gut health, hormone, mold toxicity. What tests can you do to find out what could be?
All of it. So we do, we have a comprehensive gut test, which is entirely different. So some people come and say, well, I've had a gut test on the NHS and they said everything's fine. It's entirely different. We get a 21-page report on the health of your gut. I
would love to do that.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. It's really interesting. And so much comes up in it. It's really so much detail in it. And it's probably, most people I work with thyroid, we run the gut test and we look at that and we get this really comprehensive report back. And we usually get a lot of findings within that we can work on. Then we can do mold testing. So if people think that usually with the mold testing, we'll try and work out whether we think it's an issue for somebody first. Some people, everybody's different, a bit like you said. Some people come into clinic and they're like, test me for everything, just run the lot and test everything. Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah. And that's the way people want to go, and that's fine. And if you've got the resources to do that and you can, you want to do it, that's a brilliant way of doing it. For other people, it's either not possible, they can't afford to do it that way, or they are a bit more nervous and they want to deal with one thing at a time. And so we work different ways, but we can do mold testing, we can do hormone testing, we do adrenal testing a lot with thyroid, because your thyroid is very linked to your adrenals, and that has a huge impact on your sleep and on your fatigue and all of those sorts of things. So there's lots of different testing that we run that is not available on the NHS and not available on private either. So it's only it's more available within the functional medicine world. But it gives us a whole picture of what's going on in the body, and that's what allows us to really dig deep and find those underlying imbalances and the root causes of the issues and get people feeling better.
So I have one question for you. If I know you've kind of just said that it's really difficult to say, because one thing will work for one person, one thing will work for another. If you could give like 5, I know you're supposed to be interviewing me, but I want to know this.
That's fine.
If you could give 5 things or 5 points of advice to someone with hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's, of 5 changes that they could make, or 5 things that they need to look at, like whether it's cutting out gluten, or I don't know if alcohol is like a big one, or exercise, diet, like 5 things that you would look at or suggest someone doing.
Yeah, the first thing I think I would say is get a full thyroid panel done. So if they haven't had, if you get no other testing done, if you really can't afford any other testing, it's so worth paying for a full thyroid panel, because you really need to know what's going on. You want to know what that autoimmune picture looks like. You want to know what the thyroid function picture looks like. You want to know if you're converting. So there's lots of different things that we can get from that. So I guess that would be my first thing. My second thing would be reduce or eliminate gluten would be the next thing.
No.
Sorry. Yeah, that would be my number 2. Number 3, I think reducing sugar, processed foods, any of those sort of, and that actually with gluten-free can be an issue as well, because a lot of people go gluten-free and they go and buy gluten-free products that are actually very, very much processed foods. So that can be an issue as well. So going gluten-free, but naturally going gluten-free by choosing foods that are naturally gluten-free. So lots of like your veggies and your beans and your grains and things that are your gluten-free grains, but things that are naturally gluten-free, as opposed to that sort of processed, switching for processed.
Gluten-free pasta, is that processed?
Depends which it is. So I use sort of a green pea pasta quite a lot.
Oh, so like a vegetable.
Yeah, they do like red lentil pasta, brown rice pasta, so things like that.
Yeah,
generally are okay and help people keep pasta in the diet when they really do love it, which I do. So I've been down this road. I've been on the other side of this and been the patient, so I know how hard it is. And I love pasta. It's one of my like favorite things, would be a good bowl of pasta. So I get how hard it is. But yeah, so that way I think third would be kind of the sugar processed foods, limit those. Fourth, I would say get more in the diet, I think. So focus on making sure you're getting all the, the NHS says 5 portions of fruit and veg a day. It's really not enough. So we want to be aiming more for 8 to 10 portions, 2 of them being fruit, the rest being veg. So I think number 4, I would go for adding more into the diet, different types of food as well. So not necessarily, people don't realize the different color foods have got the reason that they're different colors is because they've got different nutrients in. So actually, if one week you buy white onion, for example, the next week buy red onion, because you're just getting different nutrients. Even though you're eating onion both weeks, you're getting different nutrients in. Buying like tender stem broccoli and then buying your sort of normal broccoli, buying purple cauliflower and normal cauliflower, buying different types of apples. So that all increases the diversity in the diet, and that's really good for your gut health. So that would probably be my number 4. And number 5 would probably be, which is something we actually haven't touched on yet, which was another question that came in, which was around sort of lifestyle. I'd probably go for reducing stress as my number 5. Stress is a huge trigger. I know it is hard.
I don't know how people do that. Like how can you remove the stress out of your life if the stress is like your child or
yeah. And I think it's not about removing it from your life. I think it's about having good techniques to be able to manage stress. And that's where looking at your adrenals comes in, because your adrenals are very heavily linked to your stress. So making sure that actually you are dealing with stress well, your body's capable of managing stress. I think, often I've had it said to me by doctors where they've sort of said, oh, you just need to live a stress-free life and not get stressed. And it's like, great, thanks. That's, it's not going to happen, because it's not going to happen for anybody. Everybody has stresses at times in life.
Obviously, if we all had a switch, we'd switch it off.
Exactly. Of course you would. If you could just say like, right, I'm not having by the way, I'm not having stress anymore. Bye. It's like, yeah, great. If we could do that, fantastic, but we can't. So it's being able to manage it. So I think putting things in place, doing things that you enjoy, having good relationships, making sure that you've got a support network, exercise as well. For some people, that is something that, is a stress relief for them. Doesn't need to be intense exercise. Going for a walk outside, just getting out in nature, going for a walk. Those things are all very stress relieving. It might be sitting and reading a book. It doesn't necessarily even need to be exercise. Just getting some things into your life that help you in terms of that management of stress. Doing things you enjoy, having a bit of joy and fulfillment in life. I think that would be my sort of number 5, would be around that sort of all that lifestyle stuff.
Amazing. I had one more question. Sorry, I know you're probably ask me. If you're looking at your gut health, what few things can you do to instantly or like steps that you can take to improve your gut health if you are thinking that your gut's not quite right? Because I don't think my gut's quite right. I've never really thought, I've always had problems with, like, when I was younger, especially constipation, bloating, just all those sort of things, like just
always been issues.
A bit uncomfortable. Yeah.
Unfortunately for you, one of the first things would be removing the gluten. Sorry about that. The other thing would be that diversity. So getting more different types of foods in, that's going to really help support. So we've got the microbiome in the gut, which is all the bacteria, and we want all the good bacteria in the gut. We want a really good balance of it. And the way that we build that up is by having much more diverse food in the diet. So the more diverse the diet, the more diverse the microbiome. So increasing your fruit and veg in the diet, particularly your veg, lots of different varieties, lots of different types, keep switching those foods around, eating different things, taking a probiotic as well can be really good. So I always recommend Simprove. It's one that I work with them. I find that one is very good. It's water-based, so it doesn't activate digestion when you take it, so it gets where it needs to go. It's a good supplement. And I mean, so running, for people like that feel that they've got gut health problems, running what we call an elimination program, but I don't like calling it. So I've got like a 6-week plan that I have for people. You can get it on the website. So if people are worried about this, you can join on the website. And it's a 6-week program where we eliminate the foods that are the common trigger foods for a few weeks. And then we start reintroducing, and you have to do the reintroduction in a very particular way to be able to assess whether or not that food is impacting you. But the reason we do that, rather than just sort of saying like, take out all these foods, is that we can then see for the individual which ones they actually need to be taking out and which ones actually they're tolerating, because people will tolerate different foods. And we don't want to take out too much from the diet. We want to keep as much in as possible. So it's about taking out all the trigger foods and then reintroducing as much as possible. We do that over a kind of 6-week cycle. And that can be really beneficial for people as well. But gut health is hugely important with autoimmune issues.
Okay, amazing.
Brilliant. Frankie, thank you so much for joining me today. I've loved talking to you.
I know, me too. Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. We've got a few things that we're going to put into the show notes below. So we will link to your Instagram and things like that, because I know you've sort of been talking about thyroid and things like that. So we'll link your Instagram below so people can give you a follow and see what you've been talking about and see the recipes that you're sharing as you're doing a few more of those kind of gluten-free and sugar-free ones. But thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
If you're looking to support your thyroid, we've got many things for you that can help. We're going to link these below in the show notes. But we've got free downloads, things from understanding your thyroid test results to 30 steps to thyroid health. You can get those in the links below. We've also got our thyroid bundle, which is 21 guides on how to work on your thyroid health, as well as our nutrition plans. So these are done for you. You get meal plans, you get shopping lists, you get prep tips to help make things really quick and easy to implement in your day-to-day life. You get guides to help you on your journey, and also get a group chat, which I will be jumping into to help answer any of your questions. The nutrition plans that are going to be really useful for thyroid health. We've got the autoimmune plan, which is all around building energy and balancing your immune system. We've got the gut healing plans. If you feel like you get a lot of those gut symptoms and that's something that plays a big part for you, then the gut healing plan is going to be really good. And then we've also got the things that we talked about with Frankie in this episode. So we've got, if you struggle to go gluten and dairy free, or if you struggle to go sugar free, or if you struggle to get more plant foods into your diet, we've got the Go range of nutrition plans. So we've got Go gluten and dairy free, Go sugar free, or Go plant based. All of those will be linked below and are there on our website for you to buy at any time. You can also use Frankie's code, Frankie10, all capitals, to get 10% off any of our nutrition plans. I hope today's episode has provided you with valuable insights and inspired you to take charge of your health. If you'd like to support our podcast and help us to reach a wider audience, we kindly ask that you follow, rate, and review the show. By doing so, you're playing a crucial role in spreading a positive message around health and empowering others to live their best lives.